New Year. Uh, Hopefully, everybody had a productive holiday. Moving forward, we're excited about the opportunities that present themselves, particularly, with a new administration coming up and new ideas and fresh and fresh resources and fresh minds. So, I just want to thank everybody for being here today on a Friday. Rick, I'll kick it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy. And again, happy New Year to everybody. I hope you all had great holidays. And I too am excited about turning the page on 2020. We definitely, hopefully 2021 will be a much better year. And next year at this time, we'll look back on 2020 and 2021 and go, wow, what a weird time in the world it was. And at least we, as part of this group, tried to move the ball forward and help residents and help landlords. So just to start with, our last meeting, we're all getting used to, I think, these Zoom meetings, but they are complicated to deal with large groups in this kind of setting. And I know we had a lot of discussion about trying to, on the fly, get consensus on the two proposals that were put forward, and we didn't get there. We also used up the time and didn't get time to see some really interesting projects that we're going to be seeing today. So what hopefully will happen over the next couple of weeks is we'll be able to get consensus built on the two proposals that we want to put forth to the policymakers. And I know that the working groups are going to get together to work on that. And I just want to say thank you for the time that you have spent with the task force so far, and hopefully we'll create some meaningful dialogue in the future. I do fundamentally believe that it's been really great getting this group together, because I will tell you, just me personally, I haven't been involved with a lot of the folks on this on the task force, and I think it's been really eye-opening for me and helped me understand the issues a whole lot better than I did before. So, and I hope that is the case for everyone on the call. So with that, thanks for being here today. And Stephen, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Great. Okay, thanks everybody. Just in terms of quick things, one, Happy New Year to everybody. Obviously, we're having this conversation in the midst of a really difficult week, and just don't want to sort of not acknowledge the reality of that. And just kind of to make sure to set the context for a couple of things. First, as we indicated in the note to everybody, we are going to try to adjourn the full task force meeting by 11, and then from 11 to 12 have the Access to Justice and the rental assistance working groups meet so that they can begin the process of finalizing their recommendations. And we'll talk a little bit about the next steps in the process to get that to happen and to bring those recommendations back to the full task force in a few minutes. Second is that because of that, this meeting is being attended by all of the task force members, but also members of the working group were invited if they wanted to join early to listen to the full task force meeting. So as you look across the proverbial Hollywood squares, you'll probably see some people who may or may not have been in attendance on the task force meeting before. I think Cynthia had sent out, and I think everyone on this call is aware of the fact that the CDC order was extended through the end of January, and that in addition to that, in the bill that Congress passed, $25 billion of rental assistance money was provided for. I don't believe that the final amount that is coming to the city has been determined yet, but you all probably saw the article in the Chronicle yesterday that there's a significant amount of money that is going to be coming to the city. And obviously the city will very much now have additional resources, and I presume the county will as well, that they will be allocating towards the problem that we've been working on. In terms of a quick overview of just the agenda for today, we'll have Jeff give us an update on the eviction filings. Then Renee and Cynthia are going to bring us up to date on what has been going on the rental assistance programs. And then our team will present on the work streams and the next steps. And we'll spend the majority of that time talking about the policy recommendations, which is the piece that we really want to accelerate, that's new for us in the few weeks ahead. And then at that point, we will adjourn into the working groups. So with that, I will hand the keys over to Jeff Reichman. So Jeff.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. It's a good beginning to the year. I'm going to give a brief update about eviction cases filed in Harris County through the holidays. Can everybody see my screen okay? I'm just going to assume we can. Basically, eviction case filings are steady. We're seeing a slightly elevated increase in December that's holding steady through January. So it's higher than it's been throughout the pandemic, but it's not at the level that it was prior to the pandemic. We are seeing eviction dockets picking up as the court picks up. From a representation standpoint, we're looking at, for the month of December, almost 5% were assisted by attorneys. That trends with November, which was 4.99%, in October, and there were low points there over the summer. From a future update standpoint, I want to get a little more detail around these updates for y'all, including the time periods covered. So we're going to be updating the dashboard with monthly comparisons year over year. How does January 2019, 2020, and 2021 look from a case filing standpoint? We're going to continue doing data collection for the CDC moratorium to understand how many cases received a CDC abatement. We're going to be looking at eviction rates by neighborhoods and doing further analysis on docket trends. So really trying to get a closer look at the different points in the eviction pipeline using data. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Well, great. If you do have any questions, just let me know. I'll put my email in the chat here.
Okay, Cynthia, you want to start with us?
Hold on 1 second. Okay, hi everyone. Well, we are very glad to have been part of this effort to help so many people in Harris County. It was a big undertaking, but we are grateful to all the people that certainly referred people to the open application period and to the website to learn about more information. We expended all the dollars by December 31st. I do have a PowerPoint somewhere. Share screen, hold on. Well, where'd it go? Let me find it. I had it up. Shannon, are you on the call?
1 second. Claire needs to unmute. Shannon is on the call.
Let me ask, yeah, I'm going to turn off my my video because I don't know, my internet out here isn't very good. Here it is. Okay, so now let me find you.
You want us to just, you want us to have Renee? Why don't we just maybe we'll shift to Renee.
I'm sorry, I started already with my very short PowerPoint, but it's not here. So I'll go second.
Okay, perfect. Renee, you want to jump in? And Claire will unmute you and then you can get going.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Claire, I sent you the presentation prior to the meeting, just a one-pager deal, just so that everybody can see it. If you have it, pop it up. If not, let me know and I could pop it up on my screen.
Yes, give me 1 second.
While she does that, I'll just be brief. So as Cynthia mentioned, we also pushed towards the December 30th deadline, not knowing what was going to happen with the stimulus package, but more importantly, knowing that people need resources now, not later. So we also pushed through that deadline. And just happy to report that we met full expenditures by December 30th for both rental assistance and direct assistance. So at this point, what we're doing is doing some final cleanups, addressing some, payment issues, just things that just come across as, you do these multitude of transactions that just happened. We are still receiving refunds from landlords and we'll continue to receive refunds. And just to clarify on that, what happens is, the applicant will tell us they owe a certain amount in past due rent. We pay that amount to the landlord based on landlord agreement. The landlord knows that they only receive payment for amount dues and they're required to return refunds to us. So we receive about $200,000 in refunds from City of Houston Fund and about $300,000 refunds from Harris County Fund. So those have already been put back in. So we anticipated, we projected what the refunds were going to be, and we went ahead and oversubscribed in terms of payments to landlords so that we can fully utilize all the funds. But here's a recap, not very fancy, but this is the latest as of today with the last check run that we did before the end of the year. And we are doing some deeper analysis and we'll provide deeper reports in terms of how all this breaks down, the types of landlords paid, payments by census, by zip code, all of that we are working on to bring together all the different contracts and so that we could have a full picture of what happened with some of these direct assistance programs. So in rental assistance, we had $64.5 million paid out by December 30th, serving over 48,000 applicants. So those are applications in some programs, like in City of Houston Rental Assistance Program number 1 to the City of Houston Rental Assistance Program number 2. An applicant can actually apply for both rounds, but it was different months that they would apply for. So I'll say this disclaimer as much as possible. There was a lot of deduplication, making sure there wasn't duplication of benefits, those kind of things. And I think that went extremely well in terms of trying to get this money out to as many people as possible who are eligible. So 64.5 million, over 48,000 applications processed. And then there at the end, again, in partnership with Catholic Charities and with the City of Houston, we took on some of the direct assistance applications that had been submitted to Catholic Charities. Again, I want to thank them and for their partnership and willingness to work with us on that. But we did end up spending all the funds by December 30th. 15,700 applicants received $1,200 checks from the City of Houston Direct Assistance, and then another 1,200 applicants. Primarily, I would say 99% of those were applicants who were somewhat questionable whether their immigration status, and they were not eligible, they potentially would not be eligible for the City of Houston Direct Assistance Fund. So we funded them through private funds. In all, in 2020, $86 million worth of this work, serving over 65,500 applicants. And again, I will be happy to, once we have our end of year analysis and report ready, I'll be happy to share that with this group. With that, any questions? Do we have any data on amount of back rent still owed and addressed with payment plans? Yes, we do, Martha. And one thing I'll mention, I'm sorry, that came as a chat privately to me, so I apologize. But We do know that as of right now, in the round 3 phase of these rental assistance programs, we did have about 15,000 applicants who did not receive funding. And this week on Monday, on January 4th, they all received notification letting them know that all funds have been exhausted, but that we still have their application on queue. And in fact, we're still wanting to do some work with them to get them, get them to the finish line in terms of their eligibility determination. We're still wanting to do some work with them, again, to tee this up for when additional stimulus rental assistance funds become available. The funds, the 69 million from the city and the $90 million from the county. And we're not sure how that's going to go, but we're still working with them so that we are not starting from point zero when those funds become available, that we actually already have some people in the queue. So I don't see any other questions. So that's my report. Thank you all very much.
Cynthia, you got your PowerPoint working? Okay, Shannon, do you are you available to present it? And if not, no problem. We'll just move on and we'll see if Cynthia.
Sure.
Oh wait, Claire needs to unmute her, or Cynthia, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, there should be a button, Cynthia, that says unmute or.
Why I don't
We hear
can't
you
get
now.
it to share, I don't know. So I'll just tell you what it says, and then Claire, I'll send it to you. I will just, I mean, very briefly, similar to what Renee said, we were able to distribute all the funds by the 30th. Where is my PowerPoint? It disappeared. Here we go. So in total, $400,400 was allocated. We assisted 51,167 families throughout the 4 precincts in Harris County. In terms of the supplemental funds, we had a charge to do it, to distribute it as equally as we could. And I think we achieved that for the most part. There was an extra allocation of $1,400,400 to precinct 2, which allowed us to serve an additional 1,167 families in precinct 2. I'll send this out to you, Claire, and you can either put it in the chat or however you want to share it. But overall, everyone pretty much came close to, if you round up to 25%. Precinct 1 got 15.4 million, precinct 2, 14.8, precinct 3, 14.4, and precinct 4, 15.3. That totaled the $60 million that was allocated for the direct assistance. And then, like I said, precinct 2 had an additional 1.4 million that they allocated. So I was very happy that we met our goals for the project. I really can't give enough credit really to Connective, who worked with us through all of the kinks that you might imagine throughout a project like this to help us communicate with the individuals who applied, those who were not selected, and then those who did not qualify for any number of reasons. We'll be doing some more analysis on this in terms of by precinct, the demographics. I don't know that we could break it down as far as neighborhoods or census tracts, but I'm sure that working with Connective, we can provide you with more of a data analysis. This is just a very high level report. Let me give you an example of a couple of people who called in to me and let me know what difference this made. And I don't honestly remember what precinct this was, but a gentleman called me to follow up and said, I replied, I'm, waiting. And he hadn't just quite submitted all his documentation. And I said, well, where are you staying now? He goes, I'm staying in my storage unit because I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money to get in a hotel till this comes through. And he'd applied for subsidized housing and that was approved, but he hadn't found a place yet. I said, well, we can't have you staying in a storage unit. That's no place to live. So we put him up in a efficiency unit until the housing assistance in his CHIP was relieved. So he emailed me a picture of him in his new apartment. And it was, when we say it takes a village, it really does, because not just to raise a child, but to raise everyone up. So a faith-based ministry helped move him in. We were able to get furniture donations from and helped facilitate like household goods for him because he literally was starting with nothing. And he showed me his apartment, and now I think he's made use of some other community referrals. So we're staying in contact with him in terms of a case management basis. So from the streets to a storage unit to stable housing, that's what this program has helped to do. In another situation, an individual contacted me and let me know that he, in the month of the summer, I guess he contracted COVID, and not only the father that he cared for, but members of his family. He was out of work for a month, which devastated this family financially. So they were on a slow crawl back to getting back on their feet. And this $1,200 made a difference in terms of helping to pay for medications and some back due rent. So while it wasn't, $1,200 made a big difference for, the majority, all the people that we contacted. So I'm very proud to have worked with Connective, with all of our staff, with all of you, and certainly with Baker Ripley in helping all of these families. And that's my report.
Terrific. Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so Claire, you want to pull up the deck, please? Or is Elaine going to do it?
Sure, I think Elaine's going to do it.
Okay, great.
One quick question for Renee, if there's time.
Yep, go ahead.
It's just how many tenant applications were set aside because landlords refused to apply or participate. And Renee, I'm unmuting you.
We did have, that's a very good question, Donna, but we did have a process in our website after launch where tenants whose landlords did not participate could tell us their names and give us their information. And we called it the tenant registry so that we could know who were there. I will tell you that we did go back into that tenant registry, and when the City of Houston direct assistance dollars became available, we did pull selection of some of those tenants from that tenant registry to serve them through the direct assistance numbers. So the numbers that I showed where we spent the $20 million on direct assistance, that included some of the applications from Catholic Charities, but it also included some folks, not all, but at least some folks from the tenant registry. Don't quote me on this, but our numbers continue to increase on that tenant registry. And I believe at year end, we were close to about 8,000, or I want to say it's 8,000 tenants who were interested in rental assistance, whose landlords had not registered, who had not enrolled in the program. And just a few more words on that. Again, we're looking at rental assistance 2.1 for this year, and looking because the legislation, the stimulus money, does allow for payments directly to landlords, but it also allows payments directly to tenants. So we are doing some program design and system design work now to see how we could have multiple pathways for assistance. One, of course, the larger one being where landlords participate, but then another avenue for where tenants can receive assistance without necessarily having their landlords participate. But I will confirm that number for you, and I'll send up a follow-up email about what our tenant registry number is at this point.
Then we have one follow-up question about would the new legislation allow for assistance to landlords where tenants do not apply?
I'll give my initial analysis on it. If that's a question for me, maybe somebody else may weigh in, but my understanding is that the new legislation does allow for landlords to apply on behalf of tenants. My guess is going to be that, yes, they'll be able to submit those applications on behalf of tenants. We got to see how both the city and the county, which is our local funds, or of course, our regional funds where they're going to come in, sort of where they land on how that may work. So landlords, I will tell you that we did operate a project in El Paso for rental assistance where it definitely involved the landlord getting those applications in. And like anything, there's some pros and there's some cons to that program design. Definitely, at least I think from the landlord perspective, they have a little bit better control of what's happening with applications. But in that model, you also have the same situation where if the landlord is not working through the process to get assistance to their tenants, there are many, many tenants that could be left out. So that's sort of what I know about that, is that the legislation does allow for landlords to take a more active role in getting eligibility and applications for their tenants.
Okay, Stephen, I'll turn it over
Great.
to you.
Okay. All right. So just to kind of recap, our last meeting, as you all know, we gave an overview of the work that we had been doing since July, and then sent out that slide deck. It became clear in the discussion that we were not going to be able to come to the conclusions on the rental assistance and access to justice working group recommendations, which is why we wanted to, as we indicated in our follow-up note, reconvene and sort of have those groups sort of hear some of the concerns and go back and figure out whether or not they can develop their recommendations and bring them back to the task force. Because of the amount of time that we spent, we did not have a chance for Elaine to present on the policy work that we want to do. So we want to sort of turn over and create that time for you. And then I think, the last bullet point, which is really the critical piece that I want to sort of share, is that given the events of the new year, the change in the leadership at the national level, which obviously in this week changed even more with the control of the Senate going to the Democrats. I think that we need to really assess over the course of the next few weeks where this group wants to go. And so I think very much in the next few weeks, we're going to really need everybody to think a little bit about that and then make some decisions collectively about that. Next slide, please, then. So looking ahead at the next month, our aim is to get the remaining working groups' recommendations finalized and delivered to Harris County leadership by February the 5th. And that will mean that the Access to Justice and rental assistance working groups will need to finish their work. The small landlord group will need to develop its recommendations, and the policy group will need to recommend. And of course, we recognize that a number of folks are on multiple groups, and that's going to present a bit of a challenging from a scheduling standpoint, but we just want to do our best. In terms of the questions about whether or not and how we want to proceed afterwards, I think what we want to do is we want to sort of get the sense of what this group wants to do. And so we will develop a set of questions that we want to get people to reflect upon, and then we'll do as we did at the initial meeting where we had spent the one-on-one times with everybody. And we'll just want to see what the will of the group is. And there may be some, we're not predetermining in any way where it will go or what level of interest there will be for continuing in some shape. That will really be up to us individually and collectively. And then finally, I think in terms of leave behind, we want to have a leave behind for the county with a work that some of the ways of continuing to monitor housing stability and a mechanism by which a group that would be willing to continue doing that for the county might be willing to do that. So with that, let me kind of hand it over to Jeff, who is going to talk a little bit about what we've mapped out in terms of the process for the next few weeks of the working groups taking their efforts and bringing them back to the full task force.
Thank you, Stephen. So again, kind of going back to that, if February 5th is our goal line, how are we going to get there? The LISC team has spent some time thinking about the process to how we're going to get there. And we really had three goals in mind. One was we wanted to make sure that we had clarity, right? So everybody knows kind of how we plan to get there. We also had transparency. So it's not just working groups, but the whole task force can see how we're getting to these recommendations. But also we wanted to make sure that we balance respect for the actual working groups and all the energy and information that went in there. So how are we going to do that? Well, work groups will finalize their draft recommendations and get them out via Google Docs to the committee, to the full task force. And then task force members will have 5 days to provide questions and comments. And again, we want to make sure that all task force members, are able to see what each other is saying. Then we're going to ask the work group to take that information and then decide if they want to make any additional changes to their recommendations. Each work group will take a final vote on their draft recommendations. And we're looking for a 2/3 majority to get something to its final state. But we also want to give, if task force members feel strongly, either questions or they don't agree with it, we want to make sure that the task force is able to see those too. So then finally, once that's done, it'll come back to the entire task force, and then there'll be a vote taken, and there'll be a vote taken on each recommendation separately. And we would be looking for a 2/3 majority from the entire task force to get something that's, that we send to the county as a recommendation from this group. So a lot of words, work on it. You all comment, task force looks at it, we come back and take a vote. So we've got a fairly compressed timeline, and each one of our working groups, I think, is in a different spot. Today, of course, our two groups will meet to start working through this. We'll do next week, second meeting, and that means we would have to send out the draft recommendations to the entire task force early in the week of the 22nd. Members, again, have 5 days to comment, goes back to the group, and then by the 3rd, there should be a compiled report that's been approved by the working group, so that the entire task force can take a vote on it, up or down, on February 5th. This is a compressed timeline, but it also provides the guidance to get us to the 5th so we can get these recommendations to Harris County. And in the future, your staff team is there to answer questions and support you. So if you do have any questions on the process, please reach out to us and we'll get it done. So now Elaine will talk through the policy scan that really looks at what is happening in in other cities around the country.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. So in the last couple of months, we've scanned national initiatives that address eviction prevention or mitigation, as well as housing stabilization. So this policy and program scan intends to inform our policy priorities and recommendations that will be part of the compiled recommendations that we submit to both task force leadership and the county. Last December, we kicked off our policy response team to review these other jurisdictions' approaches to evaluate which policies or programs should or could be considered at the city, county, or state level. And we're moving forward to prioritize those, the ones that align with these groups' goals. Based on the doodle poll responses, we are going to meet next Friday on January 15th as the second meeting of this group. As part of this scan on what to look around the country and looking at our group's goals, we looked at the housing stability cycle, both specifically from the tenant journey perspective. So we're looking at 4 distinct phases, which are instability and when we talk about eviction here, it's the formal process, but we also acknowledge that there are informal displacements that continue happening at each of these stages. So in the instability or pre-eviction phase, we have a cost-burdened household that has an unsustainable or unhealthy living situation. And each tenant or family or household, they have very different situations, but we are seeing a common trend of households that are struggling to find affordable rental housing near opportunities, that are spending more than 50% of their income in housing, that are living paycheck to paycheck, and that experience increased debt. And that leads to the next phase of non-payment, of households that are late in payments and do not have resources to catch up. And these can be because of the lack of emergency funds and savings, because they're living paycheck to paycheck, or they experience a one-time hurdle of job loss or reduction of work hours or an emergency related to health or others. And they are unaware of available resources that can help them to address this situation. And then the landlord files an eviction notice. So they either find the payment, they move, or dispute the eviction. So we're looking at that stage of that breakdown in that relationship, the needs for understanding that process, that the legal process of eviction. And we know there's no right to counsel in civil cases in Texas. And what we are hearing from tenants in focus groups is that is an ongoing unpleasant experience, both in navigating resources, navigating the legal process, and then navigating potential rehousing assistance. And that goes to the after the eviction, in which if you're evicted, you know that impacts your record and finding new housing options. There are barriers in accessing subsidized housing and other housing opportunities, or again, going back to the instability of finding affordable housing. And sometimes they enter either the homeless, assistance, or they go to family in these instability cycles. So it's something that keeps going on. So in looking at these breakdowns at each phase, we looked at certain categories of tenant protections, financial supports, housing supports, and legal supports that could happen at each stage that other jurisdictions are doing. The list that you're seeing here are things that are implemented or passed. In many jurisdictions, we have current recommendations that were never implemented or passed legislation. The ones that we're including in our scan are things that have been implemented or are currently in the process of potentially being implemented in these jurisdictions. You'll have this list, but in the interest of time, we will show you what this policy scan matrix looks like. This is a living document. We looked for initiatives that address prevention, mitigation, and housing stabilization. It intends to inform our recommendations. I shared already the categories, and we added outreach and public education support that happens at each of these stages. In the matrix, you'll see that there's non-COVID and COVID-related policy programs in which type of housing stability strategy it falls on, if it requires funding or not, and if it's intended to support tenants, landlords, or both, and where it has been implemented, either at the local or at the state level. We also developed one-pagers for some of these policies that include an overview, examples, and implementation considerations for each. After we met with the policy response team, we got a recommendation to going back to our guiding principles for evaluation. So policy response team members will be taking into consideration our principles, and we are going to create a scoring card that supports this framework. So each member is able to prioritize their policies following it. Just as you know, we are going to share the policy scan matrix with all task force members after this meeting, as well as the one-pagers, because we want any input or comment you might have for the policy response team to take into consideration in the next meeting. So let me share with you the policy scan. So this is what the policy scan matrix looks like. It's a little big here, but basically you will have the policy or program here at the left, the list of non-COVID-19 or COVID-19 related. The ones that are highlighted in green have already a one-pager ready for your review, and the ones in yellow are the upcoming one-pagers. You also have a legend to read some considerations here. For example, which phase of the housing stability cycle it falls on, if it requires funding, if it supports tenant landlords, or if it's neutral, if there's opposition and where. And then you're going to be able to look at the local level which jurisdiction has that specific policy or program. And if you hover, so let's say who has a ban on an eviction blacklist, so you can go and see that Baltimore has it, and you click there and you'll find the program or policy and even the bill that was considered and passed. You'll have references for each of those. And if it does have a one-pager, you'll be able to go over here, and the one-pagers have an introduction on how the matrix and the one-pagers work. And these are organized in alphabetical order, so you'll be able to see an overview, examples, implementation considerations, and some additional sources. And yeah, if you have any questions on how to navigate, each category has its own tab. So the first tab is tenant protections. The second tab is financial support. The third tab is legal support. Fourth is housing support, and then outreach and public education support. And you can see in the tab how many references are included in each tab. Again, if you have any questions about this, let me know, and we can schedule some time to go through it. Thank you.
Great. Any questions of Elaine? Okay. So Jeremy and Rick, before we break up into the working groups, any closing comments from you all, and remember that, you know, what we're going to do is adjourn, and then if you're on the Access to Justice or rental assistance working group, you can stay on and you will be assigned to the breakout rooms.
I just want to thank everybody. One of the things that this group has happened is that we've been able to talk to one another, and I think our conversations, and I think the expertise of this group is going to be crucial as we move into the new year. Right? There's been a lot of trial and error as far as rental assistance and eviction prevention from last year, and I think this group, from your various purviews, have been able to see what works and what doesn't work. Right? And so as we make recommendations, as we move forward, I continue to make sure that we want to be open and honest with one another. But when the time comes to, you know, if we want to vote on recommendations, hopefully we all are vetted. Hopefully everything is vetted in the similar light. And so this is going to be a crucial few weeks for us. I appreciate you all being attentive. I appreciate you all being very engaged in this process, because once January 31st hits, it's no telling what's going to happen. And so thank you all.
Rick, anything from your standpoint?
Stephen, I think I said everything. So Rick doesn't.
Okay. All right, excellent. Okay, so we will reconvene and see everybody on the 22nd. And hopefully we will be able to have some votes at that point, and encourage everybody to join the working group if you're on it. And when you get the questions from us about the kind of priorities in terms of how we
I'm on a
want to
Zoom
be
call,
able
and
to
I think
move.
Hold on a second, hold on.
They just wanted me to talk to them.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Stephen. I
Or
think
just as, you know, as we really, you know, invite people to respond when we send out the questions, just really encourage you to do it so that we can shape what we want our future to be after we deliver our recommendations at the beginning of February. So with that, have a nice rest of the day for people, and for those that are on working groups, just wait a minute till Claire does her magic.